There was a day, not long ago, when I realized I had become a piece of furniture in my own house. Not even a particularly useful one. More like one of those decorative stools no one's supposed to sit on. Yet there I was, perfectly stationed near the window, blending into the wallpaper of my marriage. You'd think that would have bothered me sooner, but as it turns out, existential crises aren't always loud. Sometimes they sneak in around 3 p.m. on a Sunday, when you're trying to assemble a bookshelf from a Swedish store that believes language is optional and all problems can be solved with a wooden peg and a hex key. That's when I noticed the shift. Not in my marriage, no, that boat had been drifting quietly for a while, but in myself. Something in me decided to stop pretending things were fine, and not in the passive-aggressive, marital Cold War kind of way. More like a slow removal of blinders. I was tired of being agreeable Jeremy. Calm Jeremy. Reliable. Let me hold your purse while you shop Jeremy. If marriages were department stores, I had become the lost and found, full of abandoned things no one remembered dropping off. Hannah, my wife of 7 years and high-functioning enigma, had mastered the art of emotional origami. You'd ask her how her day was, and she'd fold the answer into a crane, smile, and float it across the room, completely intact yet hollow. I used to admire that. Now I just found it exhausting. But let's go back a little. We lived in a nice enough neighborhood, cookie-cutter houses with fresh mulch and fences built more for HOA approval than privacy. I work in logistics, which is a fancy way of saying I move boxes without ever touching them. Hannah is, or was, I suppose, an art therapist. Which sounds nice in theory, until you realize that spending all day encouraging emotionally repressed adults to finger paint their feelings can make you oddly selective with your own. Now, I didn't suspect anything for a long time. Mostly because I was too busy trying not to be the kind of guy who suspects things. You know the type, midlife panic, checking mileage on her car, sniffing around her calendar for hints of impropriety like some paranoid bloodhound. That wasn't me. I prided myself on trust. Naively, perhaps, but sincerely. Besides, Hannah had always been a bit compartmentalized. She had her work self, her family self, and the mysterious private self, which I'm fairly certain she outsourced to another time zone. The turning point didn't come in the form of a text message or a scent I couldn't place. It came during a neighborhood trivia night. I know, dramatic, but bear with me. Every third Thursday, the community center puts on this event where suburban folks gather to prove they still remember high school geography and vaguely correct pop culture. Hannah and I were seated with a couple from 2 streets over, Scott and Marlene, who apparently only came to trivia night to cheat without shame and drink boxed wine like it was an Olympic sport. Anyway, things were moving along just fine until they announced the bonus round. Name that voice. Some intern had cobbled together sound bites from movies, podcasts, and obscure audiobooks. One clip played and, instantly, Hannah laughed. Not the polite chuckle she gave me when I said anything remotely humorous, but a real, delighted laugh. The interesting thing about betrayal is that it never shows up wearing a name tag. It slips in dressed like a Wednesday. Nothing flashy. Just mildly annoying and entirely too quiet. Kind of like our mailbox, which is where things picked up. I never used to check the mail. That was Hannah's job, not because of some prehistoric gender dynamic, but because she had a weird satisfaction in organizing coupons by expiration date. I let her have it. I figured if someone derives joy from knowing yogurt goes on sale every second Thursday, let them. But lately, with the painting, the odd poetry book, and her newfound enthusiasm for Tuesdays, I figured I'd start inspecting the terrain. Not rifling through her purse or shadowing her at Trader Joe's, just the mailbox. Seemed reasonable. First few days were a bust. Bills, flyers, something about gutter cleaning. But then came the letter. Plain envelope, my name on it, no return address. Inside? A printed page. No handwriting. No signature. Just one question, centered at the top of the page. Do you know what she does on Thursdays? Now, a normal person might crumple that up, blame it on bored teenagers, and move on. But I am not normal. I am Jeremy Ellis, professional overthinker and part-time domestic detective, now on unpaid overtime. Thursdays. Not Mondays. Not Fridays. Thursdays. I sat on the couch that night and casually asked Hannah, "Hey, what's your Thursday looking like?" She didn't even look up from her phone. Just work. Why? Oh, no reason. Just curious. She blinked at her screen a couple more times, then added, "Why the sudden interest?" No sudden interest. Just trying to participate in your life like a functioning husband. She smiled, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. That's sweet. Sweet. Right. like a cavity. That Thursday, I worked from home, something I hadn't done in months. Usually, I avoid it because home is where chores and laundry guilt live, but I had other priorities now. Hannah left at 8:05 a.m., same as always. Kiss on the cheek, keys in hand, out the door. I gave it 10 minutes, then grabbed my laptop and settled at the dining table where I had a view of the street. Not exactly a thrilling vantage point, unless you're into garbage trucks and aggressive joggers, but I wasn't watching the road, I was watching the mailbox. At exactly 12:43 p.m., a man on a bike rode up. Not a kid, not a delivery guy, a fully grown man, wearing a faded blue windbreaker, sunglasses, and the kind of confidence that said, "I've been doing this long enough not to care." He stopped, looked around, opened our mailbox, dropped something in, and pedaled away. I wasn't expecting a printout. That's what made it memorable. Not a note scribbled in haste, not a whisper of digital evidence forwarded from a burner email account. No, it was a single sheet of paper, neatly printed, tucked into our mailbox like it belonged there. Times New Roman. Left aligned. Very official. At the top, "Jeremy, you should know what she's been up to on Thursdays." Underneath that, a list of addresses, each followed by a date. There were 4 total, each marked with a Thursday from the past month. Next to the last one, in smaller text, "Ask about the yoga mat." This, of course, raised 2 immediate questions. First, who still uses Times New Roman voluntarily? And second, why a yoga mat? Hannah hasn't stretched on purpose since 2017, when she pulled something reaching for a bottle of Pinot Noir on the top shelf. The addresses didn't ring any bells, though the third one had a faint sense of familiarity, probably because it was 2 blocks away. I did what any rational, suspicious husband with nothing to lose and a sudden surplus of free time would do. I visited all 4 addresses the following Thursday under the pretense of community outreach for a fake neighborhood safety initiative. I made a little badge out of cardboard and wore it like someone who hadn't slept well in a few weeks but had, in fact, alphabetized every sock in his drawer to keep himself busy. The first address turned out to be a dentist's office. Normal-looking building, even had a fake tooth on the sign. The second? Some kind of shared workspace full of people with identical glasses and strong opinions about kombucha. The fourth was a plant nursery, which seemed innocent enough unless Hannah had suddenly become passionate about ferns and never mentioned it. But the third, that was where the fun began. It was an old, slightly leaning blue house with a crooked mailbox that said, Weston. The paint was peeling just enough to make it look like the owner had given up halfway through pretending to care. What caught my eye wasn't the house, though. It was the silver hatchback parked out front. Hannah's silver hatchback. She always said she liked parking in obscure spots to avoid the dording crowd, and there it was, tucked neatly between a recycling bin and what I assume was a decorative piece of broken lawn furniture. I didn't go in, of course. That would have been, well, illegal, for starters, and I wasn't about to get arrested over something this ridiculous. No, I waited. For 2 hours. I sat in my car, a block down, listening to talk radio and considering the life choices that led me to this moment. At exactly 3:36 p.m., she walked out. No yoga mat. No gym bag. Just her, wearing the same expression she wore when pretending to understand cryptocurrency, casually confident and slightly bored. She got into her car and drove off, probably to resume the thrilling world of pretending to check emails in the living room. I followed, at a respectful distance, because I'm not a maniac. I'm just a recently disillusioned husband with a decent grasp of traffic laws. Back home, she came in like nothing happened, dropped her keys in the bowl, and opened her laptop. I stared at her from the kitchen like someone who's just realized his favorite sitcom has been recast with people who look the same but have entirely different voices. Hannah, I said, do you know anyone named Weston? She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just kept typing like her fingers had been programmed by an invisible robot. Weston, she said, as if I'd asked her if she liked raisins. Yeah, lives on West Franklin Street. Blue house. She paused. I think he's one of the therapists at the clinic. Why? Oh, no reason, I said. I just saw your car parked out front today. Now she flinched. Very subtly, like someone trying not to look guilty during a game of Clue. Oh, that. I had to drop something off. It's a shared space for appointments. Not a big deal. A shared space for therapists who live in houses? She turned, finally, closing her laptop like it was full of government secrets. Jeremy, are you following me? I laughed. A long, tired, borderline unhinged laugh. The kind of laugh you have when your IKEA dresser collapses and the only tool left is a soup spoon. Following you? No. I just happened to be in the area. Community safety and all that. She squinted. Community what? Don't worry about it. I made a batch. She looked at me like I'd started drinking glue, which, honestly, felt like a reasonable next step. Jeremy, are you feeling okay? Oh, peachy. Just curious how many Thursdays you spend at Weston's place, and what kind of physical therapy requires a yoga mat and absolute secrecy. There it was. The first real pause. Not dramatic, not teary, just the kind where someone runs through all possible lies and finds none of them worth the effort. It's complicated, she said. Of course it was. It's always complicated when people try to rewrite the definition of loyalty in the margins. I'm sure it is, I said. And I'm sure it started innocently. Maybe you bumped into him at work. Maybe he told you he liked your earrings. Then suddenly you're having long conversations about your childhoods and how misunderstood you both feel in your respective emotionally stagnant relationships. Very textbook. I didn't plan for anything to happen, she mumbled. You didn't plan for gravity either. Still, here we are. She crossed her arms. What do you want me to say, Jeremy? Oh, I don't know. Maybe start with how many chapters I've missed in this charming little side narrative. That's when she decided to walk away. Not out the door, just down the hall. She needed distance, which I assumed would give her time to construct a more palatable explanation, or at least rehearse a monologue that didn't involve the phrase, it just happened, which, by the way, is also how people describe stepping in gum. I didn't follow her. I just sat on the couch, badge still hanging around my neck, staring at the ceiling like it had something to say. Maybe it did. Maybe it had seen more than I had. At least it was quiet about it. 10 minutes later, she returned with a folder. She dropped it on the coffee table like a mic at a talent show. What's this? I asked. Printouts. Emails. I figured you'd want to see them. So now it was paperwork. Great. My betrayal came with citations. I opened the folder. Inside were emails, long ones. Philosophical ones. The kind of emails people send when they want to sound profound but end up sounding like high school English teachers who've had too much wine. There were no photos, no raunchy messages, just pages of emotional analysis and reflections on connection and authenticity. I closed the folder. You wrote essays, I said. You turned your affair into a term paper. It wasn't. Don't say an affair. You'll twist it into something abstract, like it was a thought experiment or a TED Talk. I just needed someone to talk to. There are hotlines for that, Hannah. They don't involve couches and yoga props. She sat down, suddenly tired. Not guilty, just tired. Like someone who'd finally finished rearranging her moral furniture and realized the room still felt cold. Jeremy, I don't know what to do. Oh, that's easy, I said, standing up. Do nothing. I'll do the rest. And just like that, I took the badge off, dropped it in the trash, and walked upstairs. The conversation was over. But the story wasn't. Not yet. My revenge wasn't cinematic. No slow clapping, no dramatic gasps from a crowd, and definitely no conveniently timed lightning strikes. What I had was time, access, and an intimate understanding of how Hannah functioned, namely, how deeply she valued appearances. You could drop her in a volcano, and she'd still fix her hair before hitting the lava. That's where I started. You know how some people unwind by jogging or baking bread or doing yoga on rooftops? I unwind by making spreadsheets. Color-coded, conditional formatting, the works. It's soothing. So I did what I do best. I documented every Thursday therapy session, every suspicious email, every client meeting that overlapped with someone else's car parked too comfortably outside someone else's house. I compiled timestamps, copied screenshots, printed hard copies, and organized the entire thing in a navy blue binder labeled Hannah's Growth Journey, a timeline. Then I made 3 identical copies. For fun. Now, the first copy was for her. I didn't tell her about it. I just left it on her pillow one morning with a post-it note that said, required reading. The second copy I mailed to her boss. Not because I wanted her fired. No, that would be petty and dramatic. I just wanted the pleasure of knowing that the next time she tried to lecture someone on transparency, there would be a helpful visual aid lingering in the back of her manager's mind. The third copy I gave to myself as a keepsake. Because memories matter. Once the documentation phase was done, I moved to the passive sabotage phase. This is where things got fun. I didn't change the locks or throw out her clothes or deactivate her Netflix profile. That would have been too obvious. What I did instead was cancel a few recurring payments, subscriptions specifically. Not the kind that show up as your payment failed emails. No, I chose the sneaky ones. The online backup for her phone photos. The third-party calendar app she relied on for work. The cloud storage where she kept all her personal files. I let them quietly expire. The next time she needed access to something important, she'd have the pleasure of realizing that Jeremy, the living-in table, had quietly unplugged the lamp. Then there was the garage. Hannah had this ritual. Every Sunday afternoon, she'd spend exactly 40 minutes in the garage doing what she called resetting. It involved plastic bins, a label maker, and a playlist with names like Refocus. She'd organize things, relabel them, talk to herself a little. Very productive. Very Hannah. So I waited until one Saturday night when she was out getting drinks with former coworkers, and I relabeled everything in the garage. Not wildly. Just enough to create chaos. Light bulbs became winter shoes. Cleaning supplies became tax documents. Batteries were now party decorations. It wasn't destructive. I didn't throw anything out. I simply created an environment in which nothing was where it should be. It was beautiful. The next day, I watched from the kitchen as she walked into the garage and emerged 20 minutes later holding a box of sidewalk chalk and blinking like she'd just discovered gravity. She didn't say anything. She just stood in the hallway staring at the box, as if it might explain itself. "Everything okay?" I asked, sipping coffee. She paused. "I think I'm losing my mind." "Oh," I said, glancing back at the newspaper. "Must be the daylight savings shift." Now, I knew what you're thinking. None of this is revenge in the traditional sense. No scorched earth. No dramatic departure. But that's because I wasn't trying to punish her. I was trying to remove her from the pedestal she'd constructed for herself. Slowly. Precisely. Like loosening screws from a chair she hadn't realized was wobbling. Then came the nameplate. You see, Hannah had recently been promoted to Senior Coordinator of Client Wellness, which sounded important but mostly meant she now got to attend meetings that required buzzwords and hand gestures. She was proud of it. Mentioned it to the neighbors. Smiled when people asked her what she did. So I ordered a new nameplate. Identical in size, font, and material, except it read, Client Wellness. Unavailable Thursdays. I replaced the one on her desk with it and waited. It took 2 days. She stormed into the kitchen, holding it like she'd discovered contraband in her sock drawer. "What is this?" "Looks like a nameplate," I said, checking my watch. "Very professional." Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is funny?" "Not particularly," I said. "But it's accurate." She didn't respond. She just set it down on the counter with the gentleness of someone trying not to break a lie. At no point did she confess. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just started moving through the house like it was rigged with traps. Every room became suspect. Every drawer might have a post-it. Every quiet moment could contain another reminder that I wasn't clueless anymore. And that was the point. I didn't want her to apologize. I wanted her to live in the discomfort she'd spent months handing out like party favors. I wanted her to feel the slow unspooling of control, the way I had every Thursday at 5:27 p.m. Eventually, she asked me what I wanted. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the middle cushion serving as a sort of neutral zone. She had her arms folded, and I had the remote. Not because I was watching anything, but because she wasn't. "What do you want, Jeremy?" It was such a tired question. She said it like I was being difficult, like the problem wasn't the reality she'd created, but the fact that I was now responding to it. "I want my Thursdays back," I said. "And my peace. And, if we're being honest, I want to watch you try to untangle your life without me smoothing the corners. You're enjoying this." "No," I said. "I'm participating." She looked away. Not because she was ashamed. She just hated being seen. A week later, she started spending more time at the office. Claimed she was catching up on reports, attending optional meetings. I didn't ask. I just kept track of the miles on her car out of sheer habit. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was amused. The kind of amusement you feel when someone who's always worn heels finally trips and realizes the ground is closer than they thought. Hannah didn't move out. Not yet. But she started sleeping with a white noise machine and locking her phone screen after 5 seconds instead of 10. She reset her passwords. Bought a new planner. She was rebuilding. And I was watching. Because revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reminders. The thermostat argument was the last straw. Not because the temperature mattered. I can survive at 71 or 73 without collapsing, but because it was our third argument that week that had nothing to do with thermostats, light switches, or who left a wet towel on the bed. When a marriage starts using household appliances as battlegrounds, it's not about comfort. It's about timing. Hannah had started narrating her life more loudly, like I wasn't there, or like she wanted to make sure the walls were properly informed about her decision-making. I'll be working on reports tonight, she announced to no one, 2 steps into the living room. Not that I need to explain my schedule. Right. The living room appreciates transparency. I didn't reply. I was too focused on finishing the online form to request a copy of our marriage certificate, because, amusingly, I no longer had it. She kept it. Not for sentimental reasons, but probably because she liked proof she once made a decision she stuck with for longer than her gym memberships. She hovered a bit after making her announcement, clearly waiting for me to ask what kind of reports, or why the printer was still connected to my computer if she was so independent. I didn't. I clicked Submit and watched the loading wheel spin in solidarity with my patience. You're being quiet again, she said, as if it was a new condition. I'm preparing my exit in silence, I said. She blinked. You're what? I said I'm done, Hannah. Officially. Congratulations. You are now fully and gloriously unburdened. She didn't answer immediately. She stood there, arms crossed, shifting her weight like someone whose confidence was built with mismatched IKEA screws. Don't do this like it's a performance, she said. Oh, it's not. If this were a performance, I would have sold tickets and hired someone to play you who blinks less when they lie. That's not fair. I know. If I were being fair, I'd also mention how you gaslight me with the accuracy of a professional hypnotist. You're exaggerating. Okay. Let's call it unlicensed therapy with side effects. She sat on the edge of the armrest like it made her smaller. So that's it. You've decided this without even talking to me. Oh, I've talked. I've monologued. I've Q&A'd myself at 3 a.m. for weeks. And you've been holding a silent protest from the comfort of your new Thursday life. It wasn't. Don't say it wasn't like that. If I had $1 for every time someone defended an emotional entanglement with a sentence that starts that way, I could afford a better couch for my next living room. There was a pause. The kind where nobody knows if they're supposed to yell or whisper or just pick a neutral corner and pretend to check their calendar. Do you want me to leave? She asked, finally. I looked at her. I want you to pick. Either you pack a suitcase and start over, or you stay and explain what this new version of us is supposed to be, knowing everything we had is folded up in a blue binder with timestamps and passive-aggressive footnotes. That's dramatic. No, that's what I call organization. I didn't plan this, Jeremy. I didn't go looking for anything. Right. You just kept showing up for it. She didn't defend that. Smart. I've been lost lately, she said, in a tone reserved for job interviews and family holidays. Like I'm not sure who I am. Funny. You seemed very sure every Thursday from 5 to 7. You know it wasn't like that. Actually, I know exactly how it was. You told Weston about your childhood, your regrets, your dreams, and how you feel invisible. You told me the price of oat milk. That's not fair. You said that already. Get a new line. She shifted again, this time standing up and pacing like we were on stage, and the props were late. Are you really going to end it like this? She asked. No. I'm going to end it like this. I opened the drawer, pulled out a manila envelope, and handed it to her. Inside was a printed-out list of divorce mediation options with the top 3 highlighted. Each one has weekend availability. You know, for all the free time you have when you're not working on reports. You're making this official? What would you prefer? A text? A skywriter? Or should I wait for the next yoga mat clue to appear in the mailbox? She looked at the envelope like it might bite her. So you've really made up your mind. Let me put it this way. If we were a streaming show, I would have stopped watching 2 seasons ago, but I stuck around hoping the writing would get better. It didn't. This is really mature, she said, rolling her eyes. Coming from someone who communicated their needs via secret meetings and email essays, that means a lot. We stared at each other. Not in a meaningful way. Just 2 people waiting for one of them to blink or leave. You were always good at holding grudges, she said, casually folding the envelope in half. No. I'm just bad at pretending they don't exist. I guess I deserve that. You do. And more. But this isn't about punishment, Hannah. This is about accuracy. This is about calling things what they are. She sighed, loud and theatrical. So what now? You move out and start fresh? No. You do. Excuse me. You've got the affair, the crisis, the wardrobe for a single woman. I've got the mortgage, the functional calendar, and a desire to sleep without flinching. You'll land on your feet. You always do. She said nothing. Just stood there, staring at a corner of the room as if something would appear to rescue her from this conversation. You always like being the one who leaves, I added. Consider this my gift. You get to keep the title. After a minute, she nodded. Not dramatically. Just enough to acknowledge the moment like she was agreeing to a mild inconvenience. I'll start packing tomorrow. No rush, I said. But don't start another workshop about it. She left the room. No slamming, no tears. Just the sound of steps heading upstairs like it was any other Tuesday. And maybe it was. 10 minutes later, I heard a drawer open. Then another. Then silence. I sat on the couch, opened my laptop, and started a new folder, Post Hannah. I didn't fill it yet, but I would. The first morning after she moved out, the house felt fine. Not empty, not tragic. Just fine. Like someone had turned the volume down on everything. No ambient sighing in the next room. No passive-aggressive declarations about the laundry rotation. No sounds of someone putting away dishes with the dramatic flair of a one-woman performance troupe called I Do Everything Around Here. She didn't take much. A suitcase, a couple of boxes, and her desktop monitor, which she removed like it was some sacred artifact. I noticed she left the desk chair, possibly out of guilt or possibly because it squeaks when it leans left. It's hard to tell the difference with Hannah. She has a long-standing habit of confusing generosity with inconvenience. The next week was paperwork. Practical, uninspired paperwork. I submitted the mediation form. She responded with a new email address, presumably created to symbolize her transformation into someone who answers emails on time and doesn't delete every receipt for peace of mind. We didn't talk. We communicated. That's different. You talk to people you want to hear from. You communicate with people you need things from. She asked if we could close the chapter with grace. I told her I was currently out of grace but would check back when the inventory restocked. She didn't respond. It was the most honest moment we'd had in months. Friends started finding out. That's always the second act in these things, when mutual acquaintances surface with the tact of amateur journalists and the enthusiasm of game show contestants. What happened? Oh no, really? She always seemed so committed. Sure she did. And a vending machine always seems full until you shake it. I didn't give them details. I told them we grew apart, which is both accurate and satisfying to say because it makes people nod with solemn understanding instead of digging for gossip. My mother, of course, had opinions. She said, well, I always thought she had that look. What look? I asked. The look of someone who says they're fine but sharpens their eyeliner like it's a weapon. I didn't ask follow-up questions. My brother congratulated me. Not on the divorce, but on finally being interesting. He said he was tired of introducing me to his friends as the stable one. Apparently, that was code for the one nobody asks about. As for work, I got weirdly productive. Something about signing your life over to a lawyer gives you clarity on things like deadlines, inbox filters, and meetings that should have been emails. I cleaned out my desk at home, deleted shared calendars, and archived every photo of us that included inspirational captions. One team, one dream was retired permanently. The last message I got from Hannah came 3 weeks after she left. It was a text. No greeting, no punctuation. Just, do you still have the blender? I stared at it for a full minute, not because I was upset, but because it was such a perfect encapsulation of her energy. After a 7-year relationship, emotional espionage, and a separation that involved 3 witnesses and a PDF contract, the final thread she chose to tug on was the blender. I replied, yes, it misses being used for things other than ice and disappointment. She didn't respond, and that was that. The blender is still in the cabinet, not because I need it, but because throwing it out would feel too symbolic. And I'm not interested in symbols anymore. I'm interested in real things. Tangible, small, slightly chipped things. Like the ceramic bowl I found in the back of the cupboard, one she hated because it didn't match the aesthetic. I eat cereal from it now every Saturday just to remind myself that some things don't need to match anything. They just need to work. I'm not dating. I'm not putting myself out there. I'm not rediscovering myself via hikes or expensive therapy disguised as rock climbing. I'm just living. Regularly. With full control of the thermostat and the password to every streaming account. I changed my home screen to a plain background. No motivational quotes. No sunset photo from a trip we took where she pretended to like historical buildings. Just blank. It's peaceful. Some people say closure is a conversation. It's not. Closure is when you stop rehearsing what you would have said if only you had the chance. Closure is when someone asks you how things are and you don't think about them first. Last week, I donated a few things, her bookshelf, the yoga mat, some framed quotes about growth. The guy at the donation center looked at me and asked, "Moving out?" "No," I said, "cleaning up." And that's how it ends. Not with a dramatic reveal or a sweeping gesture. Just with a man folding the fitted sheet properly for the first time, realizing he likes his laundry the way it is. No chaos. No closure speech. Just room. Actual room. And that, finally, is enough. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel